honored to be a part of the ORDI team. And today we are really honored and grateful to have Dr. Shomik Ghosh with us. Dr. Shomik Ghosh is a pediatrician who is passionate about respiratory medicine, neonatology, and adolescent healthcare. He has been he has had his rigorous training from the Armed Forces Medical College, Pune, and he's at the Royal College of Pediatrics and Child Health UK. He has been raising awareness on the introduction of newborn metabolic and hearing screening through Indian Academy of Pediatrics, and also has his appreciation towards the genetic implications of the diagnostics when related to these setup. He has his offices as a president of New Kolkata Academy of Pediatrics to educate and raise awareness among his colleagues, and also the executive board member of West Bengal Association of Pediatrics. And I have been working with Sir. Sir is one of the most empathetic doctors I have come across. When we are talking about rare disease patients, empathy is something which we need. And at the same time, today, though, we have spoken about newborn, and we are so grateful to have him in the forum today. Thank you, sir. We welcome you in this series. Uh, Today's topic is actually not just about newborn screening, but it is the need of newborn screening in NICU. When we say that, we actually emphasize the fact that we know what newborn screening is, but what is the necessity or the requirement of this particular screening, and why is it so important? That is what we will get enlightened by Dr. Shomik Ghosh today. So we welcome you, and over to you for, I'm sure, an enlightening session today.
Uh, Thank you, Anjana. First and foremost, a huge note of thanks to Mr. Prasanna Shirol and ORDI for giving me this platform. They've been doing wonderful work about ailments which normally don't attract attention, and yet, God forbid, if it afflicts anyone, one knows how difficult a path it is to get some kind of succor, to get some kind of relief. Thank you, Dipanjana, for all those lovely words. So let's not waste any more time, and let's get started with the topic for today. I will request all the participants to put in your questions, whatever you want to, and at the end of the session, I think so we can take the questions from that. I hope that is okay, Dipanjana.
Yes, absolutely. We would, you can keep typing your questions, and we will be taking all the questions as far as possible at the end of the session.
Okay. Uh, Let me just start off with historically. I mean, if you were to be looking at when all this started, one would be really looking back to 1960 when Professor Robert Guthrie was the first person to have tested for phenylketonuria on a dried blood sample, and it became a national campaign in the United States. Further down the line, we had 1965 congenital hypothyroidism being introduced in the USA. We have had other pioneers also. So, Professor Guthrie, I'm sure those who work in the UK, you know about the Guthrie card or the Guthrie test that is used from the 5th to the 7th day after the baby is born for newborn screening as a national policy. Yet another prominent name would be Professor Naruse of Japan, who promoted newborn screening in his part of the world. And subsequently, there were well-developed screening programs in Australia, in China, in Korea, in Thailand, in Philippines, and in Singapore. All of this happened up to 1965. Now, the Indian efforts at trying to evolve in the direction of having something to do with newborn screening started off with a publication in 1988 in the journal Clinical Genetics. Now, this particular study was about the people in South India where a community was had a high degree of consanguinity. And because of the potential genetic risks which would result from such inbreeding, neonatal screening project was actually established as early as 1980 in the state of Karnataka for the identification of purely aminoacidemias. Now, it was a fairly large study in which about 98,256 neonates were tested. And it did give a certain amount of insight into what may be actually a minefield, uh, the unknown, the kind of illnesses about which very little was known prior to this study in the Indian population. And it did show that about 4% of the Indian population had a developmental delay. And out of the sick newborns who were handled during the study, almost 5 to 15% had a metabolic disorder. Uh, the high-risk population that was thus screened during this study, it showed up evidences or rather cases of homocystinemia, of hypoglycemia, maple syrup urine disease, phenylketonuria, hyperthyroidism, and T6PD deficiency. Indian efforts continued in very sporadic forms. I mean, there was obviously no concerted effort at the national level to take things forward. But there was sporadic efforts, and once again, we had a publication, this time in the Indian Journal of Pediatrics in 2004. And this study was conducted in the Center for DNA, Fingerprinting, and Diagnostics in Hyderabad. The key features of this particular study was that about 18,300 newborns were screened between the ages of 6 plus or minus 2 days. Capillary blood was obtained by a heel prick, and it was collected on a kind of filter paper known as SNS903. It was air dried and transported along with 1 to 2 drops of blood in EDTA coated capillary tubes. So this pilot screening program at the CDFT in Hyderabad during the year 2000, and it was published in 2004, every 3,600 babies who were born, one was affected to have an amino acid disorder. The incidence of phenylketonuria was estimated to be about 1 is to 18,300, transient tyrosinemia about 1 is to 9,000, hyperglycemia 1 is to 18,300, and hyperarginemia 1 is to 18,300. So basically from the number of cases they had 1 case of phenylketonuria, a couple of cases of transient tyrosinemia, 1 case of hyperglycemia, and 1 case of hyperarginemia. Now, this just gave us the tip of the iceberg, so to say, in the sense that this came to know that yes, the sample size was not large enough to say that this is the national incidence of these disorders in our country. It just said that in the study that we have conducted, the incidence of these amino acid disorders were as stated. There were other things which were also shared as part of the newborn screening from this particular study. And there we got a few more pointers that while we were looking for amino acidureas, congenital hypothyroidism, congenital adrenal hyperplasia were rather more common in the Indian population. And we had instances of them being positive on screening, of being recalled and followed up and ultimately confirmed and treated. So the congenital, if you look at the chart, the congenital hypothyroidism and the congenital adrenal hyperplasia gained quite a bit of prominence as far as uh, diseases which could be picked up on newborn screening. So the message from these two studies, one was in 1980 and the other was in 2000, almost 20 years apart, we had two sporadic studies. But the main message which we got was that newborn screening in India could have been established or should be established as a preventive public health program on a priority basis and on par with the immunization program. So that was the learning from these two particular studies that I have referred to. So once the study was published in 2004, obviously there was an impetus for further studies, further policy making as far as newborn screening was concerned. And all of that has been beautifully summarized in a publication in the International Journal of Neonatal Screening, where the universal implementation of newborn screening in India has really been summarized by Mr. Thomas Mooken. This was published as recently as 25th of March 2020. So why is newborn screening such a challenge in India? I mean, obviously you've got to justify whatever you're going to be doing. So the entire emphasis of the country over the last decade or so has been in trying to reduce the neonatal mortality, the neonatal morbidity, and the infant morbidity and the infant mortality. And the newborn screening programs, I mean, if we were to look at it logistically, they would only be making a very minor contribution to reducing the global burden. So that is one place where of neonatal or infant mortality, and hence finding a justification was becoming a little difficult. Now, access to healthcare for the poor, especially in the rural areas, is very, very challenging in our country. Even the urban middle class would experience serious problems in making good use. Like, you get a screening test, then what? That was a question which has not been answered in the past and probably needs to be answered in the future too. The neonatal care units that are present at the district level, they are all limited in their availability, and most of the neonatal care is available through specialized tertiary newborn units in the urban areas. Then there's also any number of misunderstandings of the screening results and which go against traditional education. Like, you get a case in a newborn, the common thing is sepsis. Even if there is no evidence of sepsis, the child gets treated as a sepsis, doesn't survive, and then the death is also ascribed to uncontrolled septicemia. So these are the kind of educational misunderstandings which we encounter. So the newborn screening, for it to become a policy, it faces a challenge that it is a very small contributor to the mortality. Access to healthcare in the rural areas is poor. The neonatal units offering these kind of services are more concentrated in the urban areas. And like I mentioned, there's misunderstandings. So what was the evolution of the newborn screening test in India? And the first real lab which offered us newborn screening as far as India was concerned was the Lal Path Labs of New Delhi. And they were the first organization in India to offer screening for a wide range of inborn errors of metabolism as far back as 2004. Now, they were pioneers and they had the product ready. The supply was there, but the demand was not there. And unfortunately, the market was really not ready to fully utilize what was being offered. The next, after 2004, the next real big institute which used the newborn screening diagnosis was actually the National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences. But what was found in NIMHANS was that it was used more for the diagnosis of symptomatic patients whom they called, patients with neurodevelopmental delay, neurological disorders, whether they had a metabolic component to that. That is what was being diagnosed more than for any pre-symptomatic diagnosis. From 2004 to 2007 and subsequently, today there are a number of newborn screening laboratories, both in the private sector and the public sector, which are offering the newborn screening tests. And they offer very comprehensive panels which resemble the recommended universal screening panel of the United States, which screens about 50 metabolic disorders. Some have subsets of it, but many of them, but not all of them, are offering themselves to be monitored by the newborn screening quality assurance program. Now, that is very, very important because these are such sensitive tests. Before you give a diagnosis to the particular family, you've got to be very, very sure that what you are offering them is not just a diagnosis, but also a follow-up. So the quality control bit has to be there, and most of the centers who are going to be offering these tests, they should, as clinicians, we should be looking out for as to whether they are being monitored by the NSQAP. So what is the feasibility as far as our country is concerned? And it has to be considered in the context of what are the competing priorities in India. Now, we have a country of more than 1 billion people, of almost 1.34 billion, and out of which about 176 million live in extreme poverty, which as per the WHO guidelines means a per capita per day income of less than 140 rupees. And their access to basic healthcare would be a challenge. So where would NBS rank in priority? The answer would be not very high. Going by recent priorities, the 2019 Indian health budget has an allocation of about $9 billion, which translates to about $600 per capita per year. So which means that the government is only willing to spend around 500 rupees per head per year on healthcare as far as union government's budget goes. Now, just to put things in context, the total cost to perform one screening test only for congenital hypothyroidism is around $5, which in Indian rupees translates to around 376 rupees. So if your annual budget, annual budget for an individual is just going to be around 488 or 500 rupees, and if around 375 is going to be the cost of only a congenital hypothyroidism test, we are obviously not going to be ranking very, very high in the priority list of the government. The main message over here is the allocation for the health budget has to increase dramatically. Presently, it's about 1 or 2% of the GDP. Unless it shoots up to something like 10% of the GDP, thinking of the feasibility in India is going to be very difficult. In a year in India, about 27 million babies are born. So, if we are going to be screening everybody only for congenital hypothyroidism, the cost will be approximately 1% of the Indian health budget. The custom duties, the taxes that are also levied on the equipment and consumables are also very high, and this leads to an increase in the screening costs. There are other also hindrances to the feasibility in India, and one is, and this is something I have to emphasize as it comes from my community, is a huge lack of awareness of inborn errors of metabolism in the medical community. While we were in medical school, there was a complete absence of learning of how to even approach a case which we thought of as a metabolic disorder. And as a result of which, there was a lot of misdiagnosis, unexplained deaths which were attributed to sepsis, to infection, to sudden infant death syndrome, and other causes. But now, as an increasing number of our Indian physicians are being the Western countries, where NBS is routine, expertise has grown, and physicians are now able to diagnose and treat disorders better. Another hindrance which has happened in India is that we've not really had an advocate or a person who really champions the cause of newborn screening. In Philippines, for example, we talked of Dr. Guthrie, we talked of Professor Natusa. There's also Dr. C. Padilla in the Philippines, who really took it upon himself that, yes, I am going to make this a national policy. And as a result of which, ultimately, he could formulate something which would benefit the population at large. So at the highest levels of government, the feasibility of the newborn screening has not yet been fully understood, and no national policy has been advocated or formulated as of now. So as of today, it is only the parent advocacy groups, out of which the Organization of Rare Diseases in India and the Metabolic Errors and Rare Diseases of India, they're doing a fantastic job with limited resources in not only, advocating the newborn screening as a national tool, but also reaching out to the unfortunate individuals who need guidance, who need to know what's hit them, and who need to know how they can have a reasonable quality of life. So private hospitals in India have really taken the lead because most of the physicians of their staff have been exposed to NBS while training abroad. The panels range from 3 disorders, very basic: congenital hypothyroidism, possibly congenital adrenal hyperplasia, and galactosemia, a few hemoglobinopathies, to a very comprehensive set which mirrors the RUSP that is followed in the US. However, until and unless we have public NBS programs, so what we talked about was private. What was being done was sporadically in the private sector. But nearly 52% of the births in India are in public hospitals. So screening programs, if they are carried out in the public hospitals, they would have the potential to achieve universal screening. Now, the cost of services of a delivery in a public sector hospital in India has been, all inclusive, has been found to be around 4,500 rupees. Since the cost is so less, NBS tests, if they could be made a part of this particular package, it would be possible to screen all babies in the public hospitals. So, after talking of all the doom and the gloom and the factors hindering the public sector NBS programs, we still have some 3 outstanding examples in our country which show that if we have the will, there is a way. Chandigarh's NBS program has been concentrated in 4 urban government hospitals, screening about 15,000 births per year. The Goa program, it screens approximately 12,500 births per year in 13 government hospitals. And Kerala is probably the largest program, which screens more than 140,000 births per year in over 90 government hospitals. And mind you, none of these programs, they screen births in private hospitals. This is entirely for the public sector. So while we talked so much about the hindrances in the feasibility, we have 3 standout examples wherein till date there are public sector newborn screening programs as a political will and as a will to serve the people. These programs have been implemented do have very low infant mortality rates. So possibly, and if I were to interpret this slide, the more burning issues like sepsis, birth asphyxia, prematurity, they've been taken care of in a better manner in these states, and as a result of which, now they have been able to divert their attention to tackling the metabolic issues. It is very similar to our adult medicine, where there was a particular phase where infectious diseases were killers all over the world. Vaccines came in, got a control over most of the infections, and now we are struggling more with the lifestyle diseases. So, same here in the neonatal and the infant population, probably the common preventable causes, once they are tackled, once you get the IMR very, very low, then what you say, it is probably possible and more feasible to concentrate on the metabolic causes for mortality. So the Indian average of 33 in 2017, uh, in 2017, the IMR was 14 for Chandigarh, and Goa and Kerala was stupendous. Goa was 9, and really hats off to Kerala for having an IMR of around 10. Goa and Kerala and even Chandigarh would probably compare with the best in the world. So the reality of India, like I was mentioning, was prematurity, low birth weight, neonatal infections, birth asphyxia, birth trauma. And though the IMR rate has come down significantly from 53 to 33, there are still large portions of the country which are grappling with these three major problems in neonatal morbidity and mortality, and as a result of which, enough attention cannot be paid to the metabolic problems. So the Chandigarh program started off in 2007. It has been a very pioneering public NBS program. They restricted them to screening for just three disorders: congenital hypothyroidism, congenital adrenal hyperplasia, and T6PD deficiency. Uh, the program has been a huge success, and they have covered close to 100% of the institutional births. The geographical area is very small, so there is a logistical efficiency. The screening tests are performed in the NVS lab that is operated by the government of Chandigarh. And this lab participates in quality control, like I mentioned previously. Now, Goa's NBS program is slightly different. Now, they had like we said, the Chandigarh program just uh, concentrated on three disorders, but the Goa program went on the PPP model, that is the public-private partnership model, and it was a very ambitious program in the sense that they went to screen almost all the 50 disorders that is being mentioned in the RUSP of the United States. And they covered almost every baby that was born in a public hospital over a 5-year period from 2008 to 2013. And the program laboratory also participated in quality control. Now, the private sector, they invested in the infrastructure and in the screening, whereas follow-up and treatment were the responsibility of the state government. Now, what really happened to this particular program is that though there was a very passionate, screening which took place, and almost 50 disorders were screened, there were not many success stories, and the government, which had the responsibility of treatment, they really did not follow up these cases once they were diagnosed. So in 2013, the program was terminated for political reasons with a change in government. Nevertheless, the program did show that it is quite possible to screen even for up to 50 disorders in a public sector setting with a PPP model, that is a public-private partnership model. There was a gap of about 5 years before Goa once again got activated sometime in August 2018. And they once again followed the PPP model, but this time the panel was reduced to 6 disorders. So the 6 disorders that were screened were congenital hypothyroidism, congenital adrenal hyperplasia, G6PD deficiency, galactosemia, biotinidase, and cystic fibrosis, because there were adequate resources to treat these disorders. However, wherever there were high-risk deliveries and all NICU admissions, they were screened for almost 50 disorders, okay, by tandem mass spectrometry. So the routine screening, which was required, was of 6 disorders, but wherever they had high-risk cases, there it was given for all NICU and high-risk deliveries. The Kerala program, so we've seen the Chandigarh program from 2007 continuing till now, the Goa program, first phase from 2008 to 2013, and then from 2018 to till date, the Chandigarh program just evaluates 3 disorders. The Goa program primarily evaluates 6 and extended screening is offered to the high-risk cases. Let us see what the Kerala program does. The Kerala program was started in 2011 and it was actually launched in 2012, and they decided to restrict it to just 4 disorders, that is congenital hypothyroidism, adrenal hyperplasia, G6PD, and galactosemia. One of the drawbacks of the Kerala program is none of the screening laboratories that participate in the quality assurance program. The goal of screening of the Kerala program is to screen all the births in the government hospitals in Kerala per year, which is around 25% of. Then the program plans to extend screening to the private hospitals. Now, mind you, the Chandigarh and the Goa program didn't touch the private hospitals. They just left it to them. But the Kerala program was unique in the sense that they have a plan wherein they will screen not only people born in the government sector, but also the ones in the private sector, which is in nearly 4 lakhs per year. So they have actually taken very concrete steps to covering almost the entire population with a newborn screening program. So they have streamlined collection and transport of samples. The testing infrastructure is fairly good now. The expertise that is available to treat the affected babies is much better. And because of the population of the state, Kerala would probably be the best positioned among all the states in India to implement a universal screening program. The conditions for the public studies, whatever has been done, that is Chandigarh, Goa, and Kerala, it does come to a conclusion that we can have a universal screening program which can include 2 to 4, 3 to 4, whatever you may say, disorders. And given the large number of births in India, if at all, and supposing cost becomes a factor, the health allocation becomes a factor, if there is one disorder which should be screened, it should be congenital hypothyroidism, because it has an incidence of about 1 in 1,700 in this country. It is well understood, easy to detect, and from the financial point of view, the return on investment is also very high. Sometime in 2005, Dr. N.V. Kumta, he estimated that about 1.5% of the babies born in India are affected by G6PD. Preliminary data from the Goa 2 program, that is the one which started in 2018, also indicate an approximately 0.36% from a sample size of around 10,000. And many tribal populations in India also have sickle cell anemia, with sickle cell anemia also have a prevalence of G6PD deficiency. So this testing for G6PD deficiency has to be considered for universal screening in India. So we have merits for congenital hypothyroidism and for G6PD. The sickle gene has a very, very high prevalence, up to 40% in certain geographies in the tribal population of this country. So probably targeted screening of these at-risk populations for hemoglobinopathies is also very, very well understood as far as India is concerned. So the awareness and the benefits. So just to summarize, if we were to, really decide on what are the disorders which we should really be screening as part of the national screening, based on the incidence in India, it has to be congenital hypothyroidism, it has to be the G6PD, and it has to be some hemoglobinopathies at targeted populations. The awareness and the benefits of NBS is increasing. It is yet not a national policy. In India, health is a state subject. That means policies are formulated by each state in a federal manner, but the funding comes from the center. So possibly if we can have a national policy with adequate funding from the center, then probably states can be encouraged to take it up as a universal screening policy. We have to remember that government cannot afford to bear all the costs. The program will have to be done in partnership with private hospitals. Private hospitals, if parents request for screening, they will have to pay for it. And when we are talking of universal screening, if we leave it entirely to the choice of the parents, parents may refuse, and so the goal of universal screening may not be achieved. So what are the service models? How can you achieve universal newborn screening? So A, you can collect samples and test them wherever the care is being given, that is the point of care. So supposing somebody is delivered at Bhagirathi Neotia Hospital, the lab at Bhagirathi Neotia Hospital tests and gives them the results. Where, and this is okay in, especially in smaller towns, smaller cities, or where you have a lab attached to a tertiary care center. The other model is to have a central laboratory where samples are collected from all over a particular geographical region and they are processed, they are transported to the central laboratory and they are processed. The advantage is that these central laboratories are very dedicated laboratories for metabolic screening, and so their expertise and interpretation probably would be better. So just to summarize, the PPP model would be very, very useful for the smaller states. You would need multiple centralized laboratories for the larger states, and the private labs will always play an because in India, public healthcare still serves as an option of last resort with very few exceptions. Those who can afford private healthcare will always choose it. And therefore, the private labs will always play a very important role in NPS for those who are willing to pay for service. So the realities in implementing a public program is that NPS is a program and it doesn't end with the result of a screening test. There has to be processes in place that collect samples, screen. They should be under good quality control by the NSQAP that is offered by the CDC. The key to the success of the program would be continuous follow-up with the affected babies. And we have to use our peripheral health workers like the ASHA workers, that is the accredited social health activist workers, to implement this program, to convince people to participate in this program, and also help in the collection of samples of this program. So it is a challenge in India. The awareness is definitely increasing. There have been programs in the last decade, like we've shown you, which have led to more and more babies being screened every year. The results of the existing programs do suggest to policymakers that, you know, there is an argument in favor of having a universal NPS program. The challenges like I have faced that I have outlined, especially the financial challenges, makes it very difficult for us to predict when every baby born in India will be screened. Probably it will take us another decade. So before I go on to the newborn hearing screen, Dipanjan, I would want to take any questions from the audience about the metabolic screen, and then I go on to the hearing screen, or
yeah, Shamik, this is Kavita here. I'm waiting for you to start my topic, and then I'll ask you questions.
I'll tell you something about your part of the subject later on after the show. So,
okay. I've got a lot of questions for you, not for hearing screening, but for these general metabolic screening. We'll discuss it later. You finish it.
Yeah. So, Dipanjana, should we take questions on the metabolic screening first and then go on to the hearing screen, or shall I carry on and finish that?
Sir, it's up to you, sir. But if you can finish. Hello.
हाँ डॉक्टर घोष मैं इसमें से
Yeah.
हेलो हाँ
Yes,
मैं
yes.
विकास भाटिया हूँ डॉक्टर साहब ऐसे सिर्फ एक चीज ऐड करना चाहता हूँ कि जो मेटाबॉलिक एरर है इनबॉर्न एरर ऑफ मेटाबॉलिज्म दीज आर ऑल साइलेंट किलर्स
Yes.
क्योंकि इसमें जो बेबी है वो 9th मंथ में माँ के पेट में बिल्कुल नॉर्मल, तो
हाँ.
केवल न्यूबॉर्न स्क्रीनिंग से ही हम लोग मालूम कर सकते हैं कि बच्चे में कोई डिफेक्ट आया है कि नहीं, क्योंकि ऑल ऑफ दीज आर यूजली हिडन. कोई
Yes.
सिम्टम लेकर बच्चा यूजली नहीं आता है जब तक कि वो मदर फीड से एक्सपोज नहीं हो. तो सिंपली ऐड कर रहा हूँ इसमें कि दीज ऑल डिसऑर्डर आर साइलेंट किलर्स.
Yeah. So that's a very important thing. I mean, when you have a screening program, you're obviously talking of picking up asymptomatic people. मतलब जिनमें कोई निशानी नहीं है, कोई भी बीमारी की कोई निशानी नहीं है जब वो जन्म लेता है, फिर उसके थोड़े पीरियड्स चालू होते हैं, फिर वो ना प्रोटीन हजम कर पाता है या कार्बोहाइड्रेट हजम कर पाता है या फैट हजम कर पाता है, and then you know they start having all the symptoms. So thank you, Dr. Vikas Bhatia. Thank you for putting in that word. Yes, they are silent killers, and unless we don't have a screening program, we will not be able to pick up these cases before they present symptomatically. Anyone else?
Sir would request you to continue, and then we take questions at the end of the session, sir.
Thank you. Okay. Fine. So that gave me a little bit of a break. Sorry. Okay, so when we talk about newborn hearing screen, we are looking at some very hard facts, and in fact, more than the metabolic screen, I think we have more justification over here, because out of every 1,000 neonates that we encounter on a day-to-day basis, there are about 5 to 6 who would be hard of hearing. And most of these wouldn't, if they're not screened, they would be picked up before 2 years of age, and there could be irreversible damage. The universal newborn hearing screen is the only way to decrease the burden of deafness in society. India actually has, for those who are not aware, we actually have a national program for prevention and control of deafness in India. And this particular program, you can and should apply the universal hearing screen in these newborns and catch them young, so that they're not missed till about 2 years, and then you've already had your permanent damage. So what does the statistics from India say? So that about per 1 million population, around 291% suffer from severe to profound hearing loss. 7% of this population has congenital hearing loss. So this national program on prevention of hearing defects started in 2006 as a pilot project in 25 districts in 10 states and 1 union territory. And over the years, till about 2015, it was scaled up to cover 203 in all states and union territories, and it was merged with the National Rural Health Mission. It incorporates the Anganwadi and the Asha workers. There is the All India Institute of Speech and Hearing, and now I'm talking only of the government sector. And mind you, the private sector works independently. We have enough people spread all over the country who help you in diagnosing a hearing defect early on. But here we are talking about what is happening in the government sector. So the All India Institute of Speech and Hearing in Mysore has multiple hospitals attached to it, and they use behavioral observation, audiometry, acoustic emissions as their methods in diagnosing hearing defects. The timing of the screening is very, very important, and let's take home this message. The words 1, 3, and 6. That is, you screen the newborn before 1 month of age, you confirm the diagnosis of hearing loss, and you fit the hearing aid before 3 months, and you enroll the child for early intervention before 6 months. So this is a radical message which needs to go across to every pediatrician listening in today, that screen the newborn before 1 month of age, confirm the diagnosis of hearing loss, fit the hearing aid before 3 months, and please enroll the child in for rehabilitation therapy, auditory rehabilitation therapy before 6 months of age. There's no point waiting till when the child is going to learn to speak. Autoacoustic emission and auditory brainstem response means the combination of two is ideal. However, it is difficult to conduct both. So only the autoacoustic emission may be used for initial screening, followed by the auditory brainstem response. We have Dr. Kavita Garg here. I'm sure she can elaborate on this further.
Thanks, Shamik. I will later.
Yeah. There are screening techniques for children more than 6 months of age, and that would be behavioral screening methods. IAP has actually in 2017, that is the Indian Academy of Pediatrics, has actually come out with very, very definitive recommendations that the first OAE should be before discharge from hospital. If the first OAE is abnormal, do the second OAE at 6 weeks during the 6 weeks immunization. Agar the second OAE turns out to be abnormal, then the ABR, that is the auditory brainstem response, and a full audiological evaluation with remediation should be achieved before 3 months. It would be in an ideal world that all NICU babies don't have an OAE, they go in for an ABR directly, and all the abnormal ABR, because ABR has more sensitivity, more specificity, and actually tells you whether the auditory nerve is involved. So all the abnormal ABRs, a detailed evaluation, hearing aid fitting, and auditory rehabs before 6 months of age. Neonatal meningitis, all imaging and cochlear implants, if required, should be done as soon as possible after discharge. Key messages, actually, I haven't taken too much of your time, is metabolic and hearing disorders may be rare, but we need to be aware. None of the two are as yet national screening programs, but through multiple forums like today's forum and hopefully many other advocacy forums, we have to strive to make them our national screening programs. Thank you. That is all that I have from my side. I would like to open the floor for questions and, more importantly, interactions as well as submissions from the learned participants.
Okay, Shamik, about normal metabolic things, see, the problem is the incidence in few of the diseases, except for congenital hypothyroidism, which obviously, as you rightly pointed out, should be done. If one disorder to be done, it should be that. Apart from that, I think, I don't know whether the other people would agree that the one which are life-threatening, like galactosemia, is one other one, though the incidence is high, but still it's a life-threatening one. So yeah. I suppose that must be included in the panel as well as an congenital adrenal hyperplasia.
Yeah, so the thing is, Kavita, if you've gone through my whole, presentation, we will have policies in place the moment we can justify the incidence of the disease as far as the population is concerned, right? Okay. Just to stark contrast population, the US or the UK would be seeing so many cases of cystic fibrosis and also of phenylketonuria in their population, right? But we probably will not be seeing so much, all right? So to just, yes, when you have a very sick neonate, or when you have suggestive symptoms, maybe you can extend the metabolic screening to any disorder that you think comes within your clinical spectrum. But when you are screening an asymptomatic population, completely asymptomatic population, it obviously will have to be the diseases that are more common. And in that situation, I think so, congenital hypothyroidism, would you say G6PD and the hemoglobinopathies would probably score over the others.
Yeah. The second thing, Shamik, you pointed out this 136 thing, the hearing thing.
Yeah.
This has shifted to 1, 2, 3 now.
Yeah, I'm sure it would have.
Okay.
I'm sure it would have. With somebody like Kavita right behind, with somebody like Kavita right behind, I'm sure it would shift more to just one after this.
Now, the third thing is,
Please go on, please go on.
I 100% agree that during our MD days, we were not aware of these things. And I remember in that huge book of Nelson, I used to pass on the chapter of hearing and speech development, but now I have to deal with it as a specialist practitioner. Okay, so
nature has its ways of leveling out.
Yeah, and one thing you have mentioned about behavioral observation audiometry around the country, and when I was in UK also, this test is very, very subjective test, Shamik. There are lots of false negative and false positive tests results about this test. So I don't know, it should not never be included in the protocol of hearing screening, frankly speaking, until and unless the observer and the tester is very, very experienced. Okay, because we in India particularly, I'm telling you, we do not get a sound proof room. We do not get a sound treated room. Forget about the soundproof room. So if the room is not quiet or sound controlled, then these tests are very likely to give false negative results. Okay, so
Hello.
Okay. Yeah. So other people can go on with the questions if
Hello.
हेलो
हेलो हेलो
मैं
विकास
बात
जी
जी मैं बोल सकता हूँ
हाँ जी बोलिए
डॉक्टर साहब आपने अभी बहुत अच्छी स्लाइड्स दिखाई मेटाबॉलिक एरर के बारे में जहाँ तक आपने डेटा दिया तो मैं डेटा के लिए आपको बताना चाहूँगा कि जो केरला जो कर रहा है न्यूबॉर्न स्क्रीनिंग उसका डेटा है 885/1 जो चंडीगढ़ मेडिकल कॉलेज पिछले 16 सालों से कर रहा है उसका डेटा भी अराउंड 800/1 है। तो जैसे आपने दो सब्जेक्ट लिए, एक तो एनआईसीयू के अंदर न्यूबॉर्न स्क्रीनिंग और एक यूनिवर्सल मैंडेटरी न्यूबॉर्न स्क्रीनिंग प्रोग्राम। तो जहां तक कोर पैनल की बात है जिसमें CAH गैलेक्टोसीमिया या G6PD आता है, वो तो हर हॉस्पिटल को अपनी पॉलिसी और अपने प्रोटोकॉल के हिसाब से इसे मैंडेटरी करना ही करना चाहिए। जी, जहां तक एनआईसीयू की बात है तो जैसा आपने अपनी स्लाइड के अंदर बताया कि अराउंड 5 से 15% सिक बच्चे एनआईसीयू के अंदर मेटाबॉलिक एरर से सफर्ड होते हैं। तो जितना मैं नॉलेज रखता हूं इसमें मैक्सिमम बच्चे मेपल सिरप यूरिन डिजीज से या यूरिनरी साइकिल डिसऑर्डर से सफर्ड होकर और अनएक्सप्लेन तरीके से सेप्टिसीमिया करके वो लोग ट्रीट होते हैं और वो बहुत अच्छे से डाइट मैनेज करके वो मैनेज हो सकते हैं। तो सबसे बड़ा इसमें जो मेरा सजेशन है कि अगर इनबॉर्न एरर मेटाबॉलिज्म वाले बच्चों को एनआईसीयू में ट्रीट करना है तो इट्स ऑलमोस्ट टीम वर्क, कि अगर जरा सा भी सस्पेक्ट है, उनका कुछ अमोनिया बढ़ा हुआ है या लैक्टेट बढ़ा हुआ है, तो दे शुड बी गो फॉर न्यूबॉर्न स्क्रीनिंग। तो हम लोग इन बच्चों को, कई बच्चों को हम लोग सेव कर सकते हैं। ये मेरा सजेशन है एक्चुअल में।
Vikas ji, let me respond to that. I think so the Kerala model is very model is very very clear कि अगर कोई बच्चा NICU में जा रहा है, वहां पे उसका इलाज हो रहा है, तो वहां पे it is not getting restricted to 6 or 3 or 4. There all the 50 disorders are being screened. And जो सबको समझना है, everyone who has joined in today, I can just give you a small but very important pathway for diagnosing metabolic, the broad groups of the metabolic disorders. So if you have a sick newborn, where you are not really finding आपको कारण नहीं मिल रहा है कि क्यों ये बच्चा मेरा बीमार है, please do a serum lactate, please do a serum ammonia, and please also look into the urine for ketone bodies. So if you have a serum lactate that is very, very raised, you're most likely dealing with a carbohydrate metabolism disorder. If you are dealing with a serum ammonia which is in the hundreds, then you're probably dealing with an organic acidemia. If it's in the thousands, you're probably dealing with an amino aciduria. And if you do not get ketones in the urine, you're probably dealing with a fatty acid oxidation disorder. So you are able to, find out exactly which group to be concentrating on by just doing this very, very simple preliminary test, which is available in almost every laboratory. So जो विकास जी कह रहे थे वो बहुत ही पर्टिनेंट पॉइंट है कि अगर आपको पिकअप करना है तो एनआईसीयू में जो बीमार बच्चे हैं उनको आपको पूरा स्क्रीनिंग कराना पड़ेगा इफ यू आर सस्पेक्टिंग अ मेटाबॉलिक डिसऑर्डर। वहां पे आप जो एसिम्प्टोमेटिक बच्चों के लिए जितना करते हैं वो करके यू कैन नॉट लीव द चाइल्ड।
Yeah, Shamit, this goes true with all the metabolic problems, including hearing. You pointed out there is 5 to 6 per thousand. This is in the normal newborn population. In the high risk population, the incidence is 12 to 15 per thousand. Actually, I'm quoting with the. Yeah, I'm quoting from the study we did in Institute of Child Health 3 years back as an MD thesis project, where the incidence really came up very high. To 12 to 15 per thousand actually in the high risk population, because ICH only does high risk, they don't do any normal newborns. Yeah. So the incidence, so yeah, he's right actually. All the babies should be strictly advised for all the metabolic screening and newborn hearing screening from the neonatal nurseries. NICU.
Kavita, I mean, in one of my slides, I did mention that if a child has entered the NICU and is unwell for some reason, there is a recommendation that this child should not also be offered an OAE as a hearing screen. You must straight away go in for an ABR. Yeah. So that is also a point well taken. Yeah. Okay. Any further?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Kavita ma'am. Thank you, Vikas ji, for your questions. We have 2 or 3 more questions, but before taking those questions, I'll just sort of summarize and add my part of the discussion. Number one, Vikas ji, we were talking about, when you were talking about screening the asymptomatics, कि माँ की पेट के जब बच्चा है, बच्चा is fine, बच्चा बाहर आता है तो problem शुरू होता है कुछ दिन बाद. The very reason being that are metabolic disorders, and though we have like separate studies in India, one from South, a very recent study from Gangaram, but unfortunately we really don't have any Indian registry to say which metabolic disorders or which IEM disorders we should actually be focusing on. Like as India, we don't know what we should screen, though the WHO has said that there are 5 disorders whose incidence is very high, which sir has also pointed out, ma'am has also pointed out, you yourself have, Vikas ji has pointed out, which being the congenital hypothyroidism, the CAH, hemoglobinopathies, the sickle cell anemia, and also an SCA, and also few of the metabolic disorders. The chance or risk of India having more disorders is because of endogamy and consanguinity. Obviously, we will be taking up more cases than anywhere in the world, but unfortunately, we don't have any disease registry or any incidence rate, and unless all of India comes together, it's impossible for us to, understand the actual incidence rate. And this will only lead us, not only the government, I think Vikas ji here, ORDI, Mr. Prasanna Sirol, we are taking this up as a national policy. We are pushing boundaries, and we need more clinicians like you who are like-minded to come up and do this. The other thing, which is extremely important over here is that, sometimes we can do carrier screening. It's like a ripple effect. If we know the incidence rate, we can also screen, like we are doing thalassemia right now. if there is a high incidence rate, even couples who want to conceive can be screened, and that can also become a prevention of disease. With this note, I will take up a question of Dr. Krishnendu Sinha. He asked that in a country like India, where lack of awareness is there and NBS coverage is not good enough, rationale of choosing the core parameters versus RUSP or expanded screening panel, what should be the best way forward in the private sector?
Dr. Sinha, I think so we've covered this in our slides, but I'll summarize and repeat it, that from whatever pilot projects we've had, the studies that were done in 1980 in Bangalore or the one in Hyderabad from 2000 to 2004, we did find justification for congenital hypothyroidism. We did find justification for G6PD deficiency. We found some justification for galactosemia. We found some justification for congenital adrenal hypothyroidism, congenital adrenal hypoplasia. And we also found some justification for some of the hemoglobinopathies. So in the private sector, if you were to screen as an individual practitioner, these would be the screening options for you at a preliminary asymptomatic level. The picture changes completely if you go in for a sick neonate who's in the NICU. There, if you were to exercise your options as a clinician, you would probably will have to do nearly all the 50 disorders that will be present. But a preliminary screening, like just discussed, on the lactate levels, on the ammonia levels, and on the ketone bodies in the urine can be done to give you the broader truth. I hope that satisfies your question.
Thank you, sir, for the answer. He had another question, which is this way. Being from one of the manufacturer's side, we wish to hear from the clinicians or labs of public and private sectors the activities and proactive steps that would be necessary to increase the visibility and awareness at mass level, eventually translating to increased rate of testing.
So that question is addressed to whom over here?
To you.
Clinicians, sir.
Okay.
To you, Shamik.
Oh, yes. No. Right. Okay. See, very honestly, I think so. As increasing awareness is concerned, as far as increasing the visibility, as you mentioned, at an individual level, I can practice what I preach, and I can assure you that since 2008, when I've come back from the UK after my training there, I have been doing it on every single child that has been delivered in my hands, right? Okay. So wherever the child may be, it's not necessary that the hospital where the child was delivered supported me, but I did do it. The second part was, the hospitals that I have been attached to, I did manage to convince most of the managements to implement this as a universal screening in the hospitals. Using the IAP as a platform, I think so the 2017 draft agreement, which the paper which came out from the IAP, all of us who are IAP members and who work actively for the IAP, I think so we have brought out this policy paper. But at the end of the day, I must agree with you that it really hasn't had the desired effect as a public screening tool, so to say. It's still localized to isolated pockets in the private sector, right? But for it to become a public tool of screening, we probably will have to have the willpower of what Kerala has had, or Chandigarh has had, or Goa has had. Only then it will probably translate to becoming a public screening program.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Dr. Ghosh.
Sir, we have another question from Dr. Joshi Anand, and he says that what about screening for congenital heart disease using upper and lower limb saturations? Thank you, sir, for your question, sir.
Yeah, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant question, Dr. Joshi. And Yeah, and probably I should have covered that also. And I think so. Anybody who's a neonatologist, before he or she discharges the child, I think so. This universal screening for congenital heart disease is absolutely mandatory. It's not something that you're going to be leaving for the child to become symptomatic once the baby is discharged. And I completely take your point on board that this has to also be part of newborn
Yeah,
screening.
clinical screening is done,
Yeah,
Shamik, by
it is.
feeling the femoral,
Listening
to the
Samay,
heart sound.
yes, Dr.
So
Doctor.
we,
Samay, I like to add to this discussion. Actually, the question is very good question because it is the easiest way to screen the congenital heart disease if you assess the SpO2 value difference or the real value between the upper arm and the foot, any of the foot. So just pulse oximeter, attach the pulse oximeter after 24 hours of the life to the hand and to the foot, any foot, left or right foot, and see the difference of SpO2 value. If it is less than 95% in 3 successive observations, then the child needs to be specially cared for any congenital heart disease. If it is above 95% in anyone in the foot or arm, but if the difference between the two is more than 3% anyway, then that also indicates that the further progress should be done for assessment of the heart disease. And as you see that incidence of heart disease, congenital heart disease now 6 to 8 per thousand, and that is also a very large number of cases, and particularly the doctor's dependent circulatory states. Those cases who are dependent on the doctor's arteriosus, either in the right side or the left side problems, they can be screened very early if you do just simple pulse oximetry measurement in the upper arm and the foot and see the difference between the two. This is a very good project. I have discussed these things in 2017 in the IP at conference in Nagpur, and subsequently I suggested this as a protocol for a newborn care protocol. Government also accepted this. I think it will come out within 1 or 2 years. The protocols like the assessment of neonatal screening, assessment of heart disease, the screening protocol neonate. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Dotto. He is the head of department of Bardhaman Medical College and a very, very senior colleague of ours who's actually put in a lot of revolutionary work, I think. Not many people know. He's been part of the IAP's school protocol training policy, not only for the newborn screening, but also in autism. He is part of the central government advisory on formulating signs and symptoms in autism. So, when you talk about screening, I think so has made a very, very valid point that all newborns, if this pulse oximetry is performed on all the 4 limbs, you get a lot of information which can literally, make you aware that, yes, what are the cases which need to be followed up and diagnosed early, and what are the cases where you can be more or less sure that you are not handling a congenital heart disease. So point very well taken, Dr. Joshi. And thank you, sir, once again for elaborating on this.
Thank you, Lord.
yeah, cost here still remains important factor. I think limited number of heart disease you can diagnose with this method, Dr. Datta. As far as I know, you cannot diagnose more than 50-60% of the disease. There are some congenital heart conditions you cannot diagnose with these methods, but yeah, something better than nothing. True.
No. Sumesh, I'd like to add something to this. This is a scanning program. We are not talking about the diagnosis of the heart disease. We are not about the diagnosis of the heart disease. This is just a scanning program. Suppose you are getting one case, one baby who is having the SpO2 value less than 80% or 90% say on the limbs. What will you do? So think of whether am I dealing a case of cyanotic heart disease or any heart disease where the SpO2 value mixing of the two sides.
But yes, even picking one is important.
Depending on the condition of the baby, you can do immediate pediatric echocardiography, or if it is not possible, you are in the remote region and you think that it might be a case of cyanotic heart disease, because you see the cyanosis is very difficult to detect in the newborn because of the actocyanosis. And if you ask the newborn to open your mouth, I will see your tongue, it is virtually sometimes impossible. So baby is to cry, and when naturally baby will cry, automatically there may sometimes this unsaturation or desaturation may be there. So it is only a screening program. You should follow the help of echocardiography and pediatric cardiologist definitely. But before that, you can do a lot of things. If the SpO2 value is less than say 80% and you are thinking cyanotic heart disease, you can at least give postnatal E1 infusion to the baby and send the baby to the heart center where this treatment is possible, or the echo is possible, or the intervention can be done. This is the benefit. This is also a large screening program. It is done near about 38,000 cases, a report published in British Medical Journal 2 years back. 38,000 cases, they have got the 95% sensitivity, 96% specificity of this screening program. This is a very good screening program. I have delivered one lecture among the cardiologists also. They accepted this is a very good proposal for neonatal screening. And so this is not nothing. I am not doing at all with the diagnosis. It is screening program.
Yeah. Let me just let in on a secret over here. Yesterday, when I prepared my presentation and I sent Dipanjana the first, set, she suddenly mentioned there's hearing screen here. So she saved me from the blues from Kavita.
Dipanjana knows me very well.
But yeah, I think so. If she would have known Dr. Datta is going to be joining in, she could have saved me from this. So it's a very important point today that, when you're talking of newborn screening, yes, we are not only referring to the metabolic issues, we are also referring to hearing issues, and we can pick up with cardiovascular issues.
Thank you so much.
Anjana, just one thing I want to add in the
Sure,
last thing.
Sure, ma'am.
Samit, what the basic problem is that the group of population, the strata of population which I am dealing with belongs to like Bhagirathi Neotia, Bellevue, private nursing homes. There the incidence, if I screen 1,000 babies, I'll hardly get one baby there in a normal newborn population. For hearing, I'm talking about, plus for other metabolic disorders also. But if I go and do the same job in Chittaranjan Shishu Seva Sadan or Medical College, I'm bound to get at least 5 or 6 babies as per the incidence rightly quoted in the literature. So, this is something we are not targeting the right population as far as I know about the hearing. I need to target medical colleges, Chittaranjan Shishu Seva Sadan, public sectors. We are targeting the private ones where I know I will not get the babies who are profoundly or severe to profoundly there. So, yeah, again, until unless our government does something, it is not going to be possible. Only making protocols and guidelines is not enough by IEP. I think somebody needs to make our government aware that this has to be a government policy and government investment.
Okay, Dipanjana, before you finish, can I take this opportunity of asking Professor Dotto that since you are the head of the department of a medical college and now one of the most respected and senior members of our fraternity, sir, do you have any inkling as to whether at least the newborn hearing screen and congenital hypothyroidism can be included in the West Bengal, in our state of West Bengal, as a universal screening program?
So, we have written several times. We are trying to do almost in every meeting. This type of discussion is going on. Actually, they are also saying the hearing assessment is now done. Now, almost everywhere in SNSU and NICU, particularly, the UAE and the AVR, they are doing. Actually, they are collaborating with the private sector also, PPP model, and they are doing this in Burdwan Medical College also. We are detecting cases here. Regarding hypothyroidism, actually, the screening, and not actually screening program, but they are doing this whenever we write. They are doing this. Actually, what you are telling, that is very good proposal and very good suggestion also, I think. And we also mentioned several times in essential meeting, also say MPNC meeting different times. At least do this. We are doing all these things. We should do these things and find out this. So we are personally given will also give, and I'm very much happy that I am again reconsidering this discussion. It's a very good discussion is going on. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Coordination was
Thank you,
done.
Dr.
Thanks,
Datta.
Amit. Thanks, Deepanjana. Thanks,
Thank you,
Dr.
Kavita
Datta.
ma'am.
Okay,
Shamik sir.
Deepanjana.
Just I would
Shamik, keep
summarize.
posting about these lovely presentations. We'll join you.
Yeah.
Uh,
Deepanjana, I will request
Yes, sir.
Mr. Prasanna Shirol also to put in a few words about ORDI and the exemplary work that he's been doing. I don't think so. People who've joined him today are really aware inspiration comes from and why he is today, even conducting this webinar. I think so, Dr. Mr. Shiv, I think so. Hats off to you for whatever you've done for us. And Deepanjana, you can give in a few words of introduction, and then Mr. Shirol can just enlighten us a couple of words about what his organization is doing.
Thank you. Yeah, Datta.
I would introduce Mr. Shirol to all the people over here. He is the co-founder of Organization of Rare Disease India, and he's a Ashoka Fellow. And for those who don't know him, he is basically, if you just talk to him for 5 minutes, you are bound to have so much positive energy in you and so much energy to change a lot of things. And his inspiration or his life story comes from the fact that he is the father of a daughter who has been who is diagnosed with Pompey's disease, and he took it not just for himself because of all his journey and his late diagnosis and all what he has faced. He thought to bring up an organization where parents could come and they could have their questions answered. They could have their support system if it was to approach a doctor, if it was to approach the right test, if it was to approach the right kind of forum, also if it was to approach the government for financial help. He has been silently aiding a lot of parents, and for me, he is an inspiration of some kind. And I believe that, if you just talk to him for 5 minutes and the work he is doing, it immensely influences you as a person. Sir, a few words for you.
Thank you, Deepanjana. I think you have summarized it well. Thanks for those nice words. Just as continuation of Dr. Deepanjana, whatever told, ORDI is an umbrella organization working from last 6 years in India. We are basically into advocacy, awareness, and patient support programs. We started our work with a rare disease helpline. This is India's first rare disease helpline. Today, where we get 2 to 3 calls from parents and also from the doctors. And we have been supporting these patients through online consultation, guiding them properly, and sending them to the nearest doctor. Because in India, usually patients have a tendency to travel, 400 to 500 kilometers in search of a specialist. They may not know that the specialist is available in the hometown. And since these diseases are progressive, they require a local physician and a doctor for long term. We advocate that you should find a local doctor so that he can monitor the baby or the child on a long term basis. That is our one first. Then we work with most of the genetic centers and neurologists in India so that proper care is given. The second work is we have started in the terms of awareness. The Race for 7. Race for 7 is an awareness run. Last 4 years we've been conducting this. In fact, this year we planned in 20 cities but could conduct only in 10 because of the COVID. And in Bangalore, we have completed 5 years and more than 3,000 people come and participate. And these are all the general public, not just the parents and families. So basically, this message will go to the larger population of the city and helps us to draw the attention of the policymakers and to create an awareness. Because again, newborn screening, early diagnosis are important when it comes to rare disease. Only when the general public knows, the media knows, the message reaches to the nook and corner of the country, we are able to bring out a change. That is the main motto behind this. And even in Kolkata also, we have conducted last year and this year, which we planned. Then another important initiative is Rare Disease Coordination Center. RDCC is basically an holistic management of rare disease patient, right from identifying, diagnosing, managing, and treatment and long-term care and therapy. So we started this center in Bangalore in Indira Gandhi Institute of Child Health, which is an exclusive daycare ward, and supposedly this is the first rare disease care coordination center in India where end-to-end support system is being provided to the patient. And fortunately, Karnataka is also the first state in the country where they have started treatment for LSDs and PIDs and some other. So today, more than 80 children takes treatment under this center. This is the in collaboration with Indira Gandhi Institute of Child Health, which is the tertiary care hospital of Karnataka, and also Center of Human Genetics, headed by Dr. Meenakshi Bhatt, who is a genetic consultant. So in combination of three, we run this center, and we also have an MOU with Chennai, then Trivandrum SAT Hospital, but still yet to start the operations there. Idea is to take it over all over India, and this is a hub and spoke model. So every state we envisage that there is a hub where, and also a spoke. We have one spoke in JSS Medical College, Mysore, which is away, so that first time for major evaluation, they come to the major city, get it evaluated, get diagnosed. Then the long-term treatment and supportive care will happen at the hub, at the spoke, which is nearer to the patients. They don't have to travel frequently to the farther place. That's the idea which is built in. So we want to take it to the all over India. Then when it comes to rare disease policy, we started this as a combined initiative of all the patient group, and we also filed a PIL in both state government and central government. As a result of combined effort, there was a rare disease policy announced in 2017, but later on the policy suspended. Again in 2019 end or 2020, a new policy draft has announced. It was open for public consultation, and we were expecting that something will crop up. But unfortunately, because of the COVID, that is also kept on hold. So only when the policy comes, that will help the overall development of rare disease in India, because it addresses everything right from genetic counseling, early diagnosis, and also treatment and protocol for both treatable and non-treatable diseases. I think these are some of the major work we have been doing and which we continue to do. And in parallel, we also work with international organizations such as NORD, Eurodisease, Global Gene, and international clinical trial companies. Because in absence of an availability of the drug, at least the clinical trial is the next biggest hope for the patient. And we lobby and interact with many companies across the world so that they will come also to India as early as possible, or initiate a clinical trial in India, or recruit a patient from India. I think these are some of the works we have been doing. And recently, after the COVID, when everything was stuck like any other word, this webinar series came into the picture. That is how Care for Rare webinar series started, and this is the 9th one. And this is basically to educate the entire spectrum of stakeholders, be it doctors and also patients and other communities. So I think this is one. Thank you, Dr. Shamik, for your wonderful presentation and talk on the newborn screening, which is again thing. Thank you, Dr. Ashok Kumar. Thank you, Dr. Deepanjana. And I also like to thank all the participants who have spared their valuable time to this important subject.